The great Michael Steele, welcome back to the Mea Culpa show. So honored to have you. Lots going on, not just in your world, but in our joint world. I want to start off by talking about yesterday's Wisconsin Supreme Court race. And despite Elon Musk funneling in more than $25 million into this court race, the GOP still lost. Now, the right-wing candidate hammered culture wars, right? These culture war issues, while the Democrat basically focused on voting rights and abortion access.
Right.
My question to you is this proof that GOP messaging is finally being seen as out of touch with the voters, even in a swing state like Wisconsin?
No, I don't think so. I think this race boiled down more to Elon Musk than Donald Trump or GOP messaging. I think, Wisconsinites are a very particular kind of voter. They know their place and their role in politics, and they do not cotton well to outside influences. That's nothing new. It is something that if anyone took the time to understand how the good people of Wisconsin view their political power, if you will, it's not easily influenced. And it's one of those things that when you come in, as you noted, to drop $25 million in a state race for the Supreme Court? Are you kidding me?
Right.
I mean, you're not running for governor, and you're running for the state Supreme Court. There are going to be a lot of pissed off people, and there were. I think the second piece of this, the takeaway, is how effectively Donald Trump used Elon Musk as a shield. So in other words, if they had won this race, Donald Trump would have been out front beating his breast about the victory. And taking credit for it. I had my man Elon go in and do his thing and what have we heard from Donald Trump about the race and Elon's complete pancake on that race? Very little. And so that's one other piece. And the third piece, to your point about messaging, the GOP has no messaging other than what Donald Trump goes out and dribbles from his mouth. There's no coherent conversation. They didn't want to have a messaging around abortion rights, which were certainly a subtext on the ballot. They didn't have any messaging around the deconstruction of the federal government because, again, this being a state race for the judiciary, they didn't want to mix those apples and oranges in terms of the types of cases that could come before that court. And so they just largely stay out of it. They left it to Elon. Elon went in, thought he could throw around cash, pay off voters with $1 million check or $20 checks on election day, with all of which is illegal, and get away with it. And he didn't.
No, he did not. I mean, it's funny because this massive investment, and that's really the only way to describe it, $25+ million into a Supreme Court race, right? It's just a massive investment into it. Really what the, appearances, it suggested that billionaires believe that they can buy elections. And obviously, this is a referendum on demonstrating that the American people, that our vote is not for sale. And even
I'm not
with the unlimited money.
I appreciate the approach. I'm not going to go that far yet. I think that what happened in Wisconsin is particular to Wisconsin. I think the test is still out there to see if that statement is an accurate one. I think there may be some elections out there where Elon can get away with bribing voters. And that's an unfortunate thing to say. But I think there's so much volatility in our election process right now. You have the president announcing an executive order last week in which there's going to be further deconstruction of that process. Yes, I'm all for voter identifications, have argued for that for a long time. But what Trump is talking about is not consistent with the idea of getting voters legally and legitimately to the polls. This is more an effort to prevent that from happening, along with other efforts. And we'll see how something like dropping a lot of cash into future races will play out. You've got two big races coming up this November, Michael, which I know you're going to follow: Virginia governor's race, New Jersey governor's race. Both will be bellwethers, as they were for me in 2009, setting up 2010. How is this going to set up what the 2026 elections look like for Republicans? And certainly, how do Democrats respond to that? So I'm not all in on this. Oh, voters have shown that they can't be bought. One state Supreme Court election. That's not the same as running for Congress. That's not the same. And we've already seen some Congressman members already get bought off. They've already been bought off because they're parroting what Elon wants them to parrot in order for him to max out their campaign contributions to them. So I'm just not there yet. But this is a sign that from other aspects that voters are not going to be so easily gullible to the ideas of what Trump and MAGA are putting out there in these various elections this November and next November, particularly given the impact that it's having on them personally. That still hasn't been felt yet. And you and I've talked about that. The other side of all of this deconstruction of the administrative state are real people who need real services that will no longer have access to those services, that will no longer have access to those support systems. And how do voters respond then will be a greater tell than how much money is thrown around in campaigns.
Yeah, you see, the way I see it exactly the way you do. Right now, you have groups of individuals, veterans, the elderly, children with childhood diseases, and just a plethora of issues where there is nothing but uncertainty. And it's the uncertainty that is giving everybody more agita, more angst, and so on. But you hit the nail right on the head here. What happens when that uncertainty becomes a reality? When, as you were so forceful when you were on your weekend show, when you were talking about, for example, Lutnick's statement about how his mother-in-law wouldn't worry, when that becomes a reality and it starts to hit individuals in their pockets, they can't buy the new car that they need. They can't afford groceries. They can't afford their medication. They can't afford rent. Their Social Security checks aren't coming. If you're a veteran, you're not getting the service and the support that you need, either for your physical or your mental condition, right? And on and on and on, with more cuts being made by Doge. I believe that these are deeply unpopular Republican agendas. And when it finally comes home and it's no longer just the uncertainty, but it becomes the reality, then I think that this message that I don't give a shit how much money that you try to funnel into a race, we don't care.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And that for me is a more compelling storyline than what we witnessed last night. Look, the funk of Elon Musk in our body politic is real. The funk of Stephen Miller and so many others in this administration, Kash Patel, Crazy Eyes, all of these guys, still will have to come to truth moment when they have to confront the impact that voters are feeling from their decisions. There will be no escape here. Elon Musk can only be so much of a heat shield for Donald Trump. And as much as the MAGA folks want to ignore the fact that the real decision maker is Donald Trump and pretend at times that, people are acting outside of his wishes. That never happens in Trump world.
That never happens.
That shit never happens.
including Elon wearing that stupid cheesehead hat when he came out there jumping around. Somewhere along the line, this is also a big problem, something that I witnessed literally in my 15 years of being around Trump, including when he became president in 2017. People start to think that they're mini Donalds. They think that they can do Donald, they can be Donald, and so on. Elon Musk, with all his money, is not and will never be Donald Trump. Donald Trump has some sort of a charisma. Most people on the Democratic side cannot understand it. They can't comprehend what is it about him that draws people to him. He has been doing that his entire life. Elon Musk, with all his money, doesn't have it, right? Lutnick doesn't have it. No. Kash Patel doesn't have it. No matter how much you parrot Trump's comments, as stupid sometimes, as ridiculous as they are, sometimes it's like a word vomit salad that you can't even understand what he's talking about. It doesn't matter. Right. It still seems to resonate with a large group of people in this country. And you could shake your head and people can say, I don't get it. He's such a fool. He's a buffoon. He looks like an Oompa Loompa on steroids or human growth hormone. Say whatever you want about him. He has a charm. He has a cult-like charm that brings and indoctrinates people into that cult. Mike, there are people who are being interviewed, elder people who are going to be affected by the Social Security cuts. You even have veterans who are being interviewed that said, no, I'm still standing behind Trump, despite the fact that they're going to get hammered by this Trump agenda.
No, but that's the appeal to your point. That's the appeal of a cult leader. I mean, folks hate that you hear that term, but okay, that's the only term we have to describe the shit we're seeing. I'm sorry. Give me a better term than if you don't like cult, because tell me what is it when you're so syncophatically tied to every word of dear leader that you can't think for yourself. I mean, I'm sorry if I do something to harm you and you still want to be harmed by me, that's cultish. That's just the way it is. So
that's out of the fucking Jim Jones playbook, man. I'm telling you, you drink this
the Kool-Aid. Okay.
Right. You're going to die, but you're going to go to a better place. Okay, maybe you find one idiot that's willing to do it because they have mental issues, but thousands?
Right. Yeah. So look, folks, Democrats can't wrap their head around that. Well, MAGA can't wrap their head around anything other than Trump. I mean, and so, you have guys like you and me, especially you, who've been in that bubble and who admits, hey, yeah, I got caught up in this shit and it's crazy as hell. And let me tell you, this is what's happening. And they don't want to listen to you. I mean, that's the part I've yet to figure out, how you can so totally discount the words of someone like Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen said, look, yeah, Donald Trump is going to do X, Y, and Z, and this is why he's doing it. Everybody said, no, he's not. I'm like,
and then all of a sudden, he's doing it. And then
he's doing it. This was the guy who did the shit that you're now complaining about. And he's telling you. So this is the space we're in right now. So what I think breaks us through a lot of this, Michael, is the reality that my child has special ed needs. My child has special healthcare needs. Crazy ass Secretary of Health, RFK Jr., is firing half of the people in the health department. What do you think's going to happen, people? I mean, I don't understand. And look, I get this whole government is bad. They're full of people. They're lazy ass people sit around all day late eating bonbons and watching TV. No, they don't. And you don't. And you'll come to realize very quickly that these agencies and departments. Now, look, I've always been an advocate for government efficiencies. When I was in elective office, we did that here in Maryland. We saw where we had pens that didn't have personnel in it. We got rid of the pen. If you couldn't fund it, if you couldn't put a person in a pen for the job, that means you don't need that job, right? Those services aren't. Right. So why are we putting that money in the budget? There are legitimate things that can be streamlined and make more efficient, no doubt. But to wholesale take a hatchet to wide swaths of the federal government, you start to hit bone, and the bone is the people. And when they feel that, that's when this is going to become real for Donald Trump. And there's no amount of cultish behavior that's going to be a salve for a lot of people out there who are in pain. And that's the bigger point. And so, today, as we're having this conversation, everyone in the press is sitting there going, oh, I don't, he's about to make the big announcement on tariffs. And, I'm listening to some of the folks on various programs talking about, well, maybe this won't be as bad as we think it will be. And I'm like, bitch, please. Donald Trump just told you, I don't care if you pay more for a car. I don't care if your costs go up. I'm doing what I'm doing because this is what I want to do. I don't care the impact on you. And so now the whole ruse is exposed. This is a tax. Let's put it this way, Michael. This whole Liberation Day bullshit, at its core, is the biggest tax increase on the American people in history, period, yep. Bar none.
Yep. And let me tell you something. There is, to me, the day of reckoning is going to come to fruition. Not when veterans are unable to get the services that they need. Not even when grandma or grandpa call you up and say, can you float me $500, right? I need to buy my medicine and I still need food in the house. No, I think the one that's going to ultimately crush the GOP and this agenda is the Department of Education when they're with the defunding, especially of the meals for children. Because everybody that's elder has a grandchild, right? The parents know that they can't afford to send the kid to school with a meal. The kid is crying. The kid can't concentrate. The kid's schoolwork is suffering because their stomach is hurting because they have no food in their stomach. And why? Because Trump decided that part of the agenda is going to be to defund, put in Linda McMahon, another billionaire, the co-chief executive officer of the WWE, right? Put her in, dismantle it, and take away as part of the funding because it's fraud, waste, and abuse to make sure that a child is not hungry. When you start fucking with children, that's when you have a problem because grandma and grandpa will not go for that. Mom and dad will not go for that. And you know what? Eventually, those kids become voters too. That to me is the part that I just don't understand. The defunding of children's food, the defunding of cancer research for children. I don't understand it. To me, I also know Trump better than anyone. It's not actually Trump. It's just not him. Why he's doing it, Mike, I can't tell you. I cannot put my finger. It keeps me up so many hours at night when I get a thought in my head, right? That wakes me up, whether it's a bad dream or a PTSD moment. This is not Trump. Trump does not hate children. Right. He does not. He does not want to see anybody go hungry. He does not want to see childhood cancer. This I promise you.
Is this the Steve Millers around him? Then why is he giving up that side of himself, that part of his humanity? If he does, I mean, I would think, to your point, if he cares that much about children, having raised his own, for example. Their situation was very different from the kid who needs, a food stamp program or special ed program. Why is he letting this happen?
It's all Project 2025. It's the dismantling of government institutions, agencies, departments, and so on. Why he's allowing, whether it's the Steve Millers, the Steve Bannons, whether it's the Project 2025s, to dictate his agenda, it's because he's lazy. He doesn't want to have to sit there and create a policy. It's easy to knock down a house. Well, you know what you do? You take a gigantic fucking bulldozer, you get into it, you turn the key on, you put it into gear, and you run right through the fucking thing. And everything comes crashing down. You know what's hard? Clearing away the shit, the debris, and then rebuilding the house in its place. Right. That takes time and effort. Smashing something takes no effort at all. And he's willing to allow these people to basically put a shit stain on whatever legacy he could possibly have simply by following their direction. Talk about following of a bad direction, right? The branding of April 2nd as D-Day, as Liberation Day, where he's going to now impose these sweeping tariffs on China, Mexico, the EU, basically, according to him, every single country. Here's the problem. Major U.S. manufacturers, with automakers, and even some of the farmers that he had claimed that he was going to protect, they are all warning him that this is going to trigger higher consumer prices as well as trigger layoffs. My question to you is, how does the GOP square this with its pro-business stance?
They don't. It's inconsistent with anything that's pro-business. The GOP, you know, I've been giving a lot of thought to this, and I'm starting to do a little bit more research. I mean, having lived through running the party at various levels, county, state, and national, you know, you see telltale signs of things, Michael, that you kind of discount, and you say, that's just the politics of the moment. But then you go back and you remember those dots, and you go back to them and you connect them, and you begin to realize that perhaps the great lie of the 20th and 21st century has been this Republican Party that we have branded, you know, the sort of the Reagan Party, you know, the sort of pro-free markets, pro-business, pro-national security, pro-limited government, smaller government.
Every now and then, we're reminded of those many healthy resolutions that we've made over the years, like to lose weight, to exercise more, to eat better. But a goal without a plan, well, it's a plan that's destined to fail. Prolon's 5-day program, it gives you the tools to put your health goals into action with a science-backed plan that makes it easy to stay focused and to achieve real results. Prolon's fasting mimicking diet, well, it's a revolutionary plant-based nutrition program that nourishes the body while making cells believe that they're fasting. Researched and developed for decades at USC's Longevity Institute and backed by leading U.S. medical centers, Prolon helps support healthy blood sugar, enhanced skin appearance, fat loss, and improved energy and focus post-fast. Now, it all starts with their 5-day program. Snacks, soups, and beverages, all designed to keep your body in a fasting state. No guesswork and no planning required. 3 consecutive cycles of Prolon have been shown to reduce your biological age score by an average of, get a load of this, 2.5 years. And your waist circumference, by 1.5 inches. Prolon is fasting with food. That's right. It's fasting, but with food. It all starts with Prolon's 5-day program. Again, snacks, soups, beverages, all designed to make your body think that it's fasting. So let me be clear. I did the 5-day program and I feel much better. Prolon, really, it's not like any other diet that I've tried. Because you know why? It's not a diet. It's truly science. I mean, it was convenient. They sent me everything that I needed all in one box. To help you kickstart a health plan that truly works, Prolon is offering Mea Culpa with Michael Cohen listeners 15% off. You hear that? 15% off site-wide, plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe to their 5-day nutrition program. So go now and visit prolonlife.com/mea culpa. That's PROLONLIFE.com/mea culpa to claim your 15% discount and your bonus gift. That's prolonlife.com/mea culpa. Go there now.
That at its core, it was as it stated it was in the 30s: isolationist, nationalist, elements of
racism, sexism, misogyny, some xenophobia thrown in there, some homophobia, definitively now transphobia, a whole bunch of anti-Semitism. Yeah, they got the whole fucking gambit.
Yeah. Precisely. And so maybe that's the thing. So, maybe we need to just stop this bullshit reasoning that, we've got to get the party back to what it once was. No, the party is kind of where it's probably always been. And so the fact that there's not a Republican who is willing to use one of their balls, let alone both of them, to stand up to Trump and say, we're free market entrepreneurs. We're not isolationist, tariff seekers. We know what tariffs can do. We have seen the impact in the 30s and the 40s from the misuse and the lack of seriousness around tariff policy, and so it's for me, this is who we are. I don't expect them to do or say anything any differently. So the transformation may be what Trump has been able to do over the 10 years that he's had control of the party, and literally the 14 or 15 years in which he was seed betting a lot of the Republican voters with, through his appearances on television and hanging around women in the pageants and all those cultural things that they seem to identify with him. He's just exposed it. He's just saying, this is who you really are. Be comfortable with that. Be okay with that. And Republican leaders are like, finally, yes, this is who we are. So what I think has to happen is there will be voices emerging that will articulate that other perspective, the one that I hold about free markets and the value of our allies in NATO, standing with Ukraine, arguing against the deconstruction of the federal government to the point where it becomes useless, and articulate those positions against what this Republican Party is, not what it's become, but what it is, and what it probably always has been. Because as you know, Michael, we have had these bouts within the party before. We have danced with the John Birch Society. We embraced the Southern strategy. We, leveled up the deconstruction of the civil rights movement by embracing Barry Goldwater in the 1964 election.
Right.
Even Reagan himself launched his campaign in the heart of Mississippi in a way to embrace white segregationist men. So it's that core is there. And I think for Republicans like me and others, it's just coming to the realization that maybe we were in an effort that wasn't real, that at the end of the day, Trump was really has been the fullest expression of what Republicans are, and not Reagan, not Eisenhower, not Bush.
Wow. Meanwhile, right? So 27, and again, it's one thing when Trump says something. he's going to do this. He's going to do. I can do it in 24 hours. So everything could be done in 24 hours. It'll be done before I even enter the White House. And so, in 27 of 29 top U.S. economists, almost right, 27 of 29,
right,
stated emphatically that tariffs are essentially another tax on American consumers. Estimates showing that there's going to be a hike, an increase in the cost on everything, from cars to groceries to ballpoint pens, you name it, everything.
Yep.
Here's the problem, right? Do you see voters understanding this entire concept of tariffs? You know, after the election of Trump, right now in 2024, the number one most Google question was, what is a tariff?
What's a tariff? Yeah.
Was a tariff. I'm not joking. That you can look it up. That's
no,
a fact.
I know you're not.
What
I'm
is
familiar
a tariff?
with that. I'm familiar with that.
How do you think this is going to play out politically when every time you go, right now you go to the supermarket, you walk out with like one, maybe two bags, it's like $250, right? Yeah. Now you're going to walk out with 3/4 of one bag for the same $250. I think that this revolt is going to take place when their wallets take a hit.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that's one of the concerns Republicans have going into the midterm elections. Donald Trump is not on the ballot, but every Republican is. And so like we've seen in 2006, like we've seen in 2010, political parties that fall out of favor with the voters pay a dear price. And 2006, it was the voters were fed up with George Bush and the war in Iraq. They were pissed off about the state of the economy, which was heading into recession, and we paid a dear price at the ballot box in 2006. In 2010. Voters were bothered to no end about the emasculation of the healthcare system. They did not want government standing between them and their doctors. They were concerned about, we were still in the throes of recovery from the economics, to your point, of the crash of 2008 and 2009 in the housing market. And Democrats paid a dear price at the ballot box in 2010. This period is set up just like that. And it is compounded, Michael, because it's not just the economic piece. It's not just, what the price of gas and eggs are, but it is also what is my ability to access the services I need for my parents to get their Social Security check, to get their Medicaid payments and Medicare services done. And so you now have this compounding of all of this for a lot of Americans. And that's, to your point, where that sweet spot, which ain't going to be so sweet for Republicans, lands in November of next year. The thinking is, and this is the bullshit you're hearing from Republican members, that, yes, there'll be a little pain up front, but, this will get so much better on the back end. Well, okay, all right. But when does the pain start up front, right? Because we're already
And how long does it last?
There you go.
Right.
So you can sit there and talk all you want about pain up front. But if the pain up front lasts 6 months, if the pain up front lasts well into next year, that will be remembered by voters. Remember, the Biden took a hit even as the economy was recovering. Why? Because voters were still feeling the initial pain from it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Even at the point leading into the election itself, all the metrics were up. The Biden economy was well established. There was recovery. The people were building construction projects. Construction workers were going back to work. the impact, the initial impact of 10% inflation and higher gas prices, higher egg prices, higher, et cetera, all of that was still in the economic reality for voters. And guess what? Democrats paid the price at the ballot box, even though the economy at that point was well into recovery. And the markets reflected that. The Dow broke 40,000. All these good things were happening. 401ks were up. Well, guess what? 401ks are down, right? And the price of eggs, yes, is coming down, but everything else is going up. So this is the reality that, to your point, is going to be realized by a lot of voters. And we'll see it play out this November in Virginia and New Jersey, just as we saw it play out in the special election for the state Supreme Court of Wisconsin. And we didn't talk about the two congressional races in Florida that were R plus 30 districts, meaning those are about as blood red as you can get. And the Democrats basically lost those. Yeah, they lost, but the margin by which they lost was barely double digits. And that tells you that even Republicans in very red districts are starting to feel exactly the very thing you're talking about.
Yeah, which is crazy because it's like this administration, they believe that just by saying something that they could make it into a reality. All you need to do is go back take a look historically, from the fallout, for example, of Trump's 2018 tariffs, where manufacturing job losses outweighed any gains. All right. Then you have Press Secretary Carolyn Levitt. She comes out there and starts to spew. I call her Bullshit Barbie, where Bullshit Barbie gets up there, right? And with anger, I mean, it's like when these journalists don't do the press conferences if you don't want to give a legitimate answer. But she gets angry if you ask a question that is to provide an answer. Anything different than Donald Trump is the greatest, the smartest, the best businessman. He's the negotiator in chief. He's Superman reincarnate. If you ask a question that's different, she gets angry and she really comes at you with so much misinformation and disinformation, talking about how Trump's 2018 tariffs was an economic boom for this country. Why do you think that they're doubling down on what they know to be factually failed economic policy?
So I'm glad you brought that up on a number of levels. So first off, the Bullshit Barbie is okay, folks. It is going to be a meme. He just coined it. Trust me.
Trademark that with Von Shits and Pants and Shady Vans.
All right, so let's start with the easy part here first. What she does every day is performative bullshit for one person, period. She comes out and shows how angry every answer is given with anger. It's given with this underlying sort of dismissive, haughty, how ignorant of you. To your point, you don't know how smart Donald Trump really is. You don't know how clever he really is. How dare you ask the question? That's all bullshit. And she's doing that for Trump because the other press secretaries before weren't as effective at it as she is. She actually makes you, when you listen to her, you grit your teeth and you want to take a shower afterwards. That's how grimy and nasty you feel when she answers any question. But that's how she wants you to feel because that's what appeals to Trump. With respect to what happened in 2018 and the tariffs, y'all seem to forget, not you, because I know you know, but folks out there seem to forget the sequence of things. Donald Trump imposed those tariffs when? After the tax cuts. Mm-hmm. So very different economic outcome when you juice the economy with tax cuts, right? And so the tariffs hit, and remember how the tariffs landed. and how the tariffs were targeted. The tariffs landed and were targeted in areas that largely killed farming. And so what happened? They had to then subsidize the very farmers to some like $25 billion plus, right? So let's think about the math here. So you get past a massive tax cut that cost about $8 trillion. And then you have to spend an extra $25 billion because you pretty much put farmers out of business. So all of this conversation around, welfare and government spending was largely bullshit because the government had to create welfare and spending to save the farming industry. But it was able to float that because you had this buoyancy that was kind of put into the economy by freeing up revenue for consumers, largely billionaires, right? Because you and I didn't see massive gains from those tax cuts, right? Unless we were making well over, $2-3 million a year. So the reality was you had this extra juice in the economy that helped, at least initially, kind of get through, help the markets get through the imposition of those tariffs. And the fact that, and a lot of Republicans, Michael, like to make the argument, well, if tariffs are so bad, why did Joe Biden keep the tariffs in place? Stupid one. Let me explain to you what you're not saying. And what you're not saying is the fact that he kept in place the tariffs on China. That's what he kept in place. And Everyone has agreed that China is a bad economic actor. So it made sense, both financially and politically, to keep those tariffs in place. Tariffs that any president would likely have imposed as a result of China's bad economic behavior. So don't give us this bullshit argument like Democrats were all of a sudden for tariffs and now they're against them. You're being stupid by half. The rest of the story now is you are imposing these tariffs with the question mark around whether or not the tax cuts are going to get re-upped, which is why you're trying to cleave government in half, because you need to take money from Social Security to pay for those tax cuts in order to buffet what's going to happen with the tariffs. And so everything is a little bit ass backwards this time because the tax cuts weren't in place, are expired, that are in place are expiring. So that has an economic impact to the negative. At least it creates a question. Number two, you're imposing tariffs on the entire world, not just China, right? So that's going to have an economic impact. And number three, in order for you to pay for any of this, you're going to have to cut Medicare, period. You're just going to have to cut it. Medicaid and Medicare are going to get touched. Social Security is going to get touched. And then the next thing you're already hearing it, Michael, which also makes this economically unsustainable, is that they're already talking about having to come up with billions of dollars in, here we go, dollars for farmers who are going to be dramatically impacted once again by these tax cuts, by these tariffs. But the reality is not just farmers. It is going to be manufacturers. It is going to be the products that you get, that you use in your household. It's going to be everything, not just your groceries, not just your car, but your toothpaste and your hair products and your makeup and your lawn equipment, everything you're using, because of the global nature of what Donald Trump is doing in terms of imposing tariffs, you're going to pay for it. Right. And there's no other way to pay for it than out of your bank account.
Right. And then the funnier part is here. They ask, Caroline Levitt, right? Explain to me how you can constantly say that consumers will not be paying as a result of the tariffs. It doesn't make any sense. 27 of these 29 top economists, and then bullshit Barbie with the anger starts yelling at the journalist that's asking a question. This is a factual question. She then demonstrates her anger about the fact that you would question my intelligence as it relates to economic principles. This episode of Mea Culpa is brought to you by Graza, my new favorite olive oil. It's fresh, it's never blended, and it comes from a single type of olive, the Picual, straight out of Jaén, Spain, where over half of the world's olive oil is produced. So why Graza? Single origin goodness, that's why. Only one olive from one region. No mysterious blends. That means a traceable, a fresher product without mixing in any low grade or unknown oils. It's super fun. It has squeeze and spray bottles too. So there's no more messy tins or drippy spouts. Just aim, squeeze, and go. I mean, there are 3 types for any task that you have. One, they have something called frizzle. That's their newest, with a higher 490 degree Fahrenheit smoke point, which is perfect for frying, crisping, or grilling. Sizzle at 410 degrees Fahrenheit, which is an everyday cooking oil for roasting, marinating, and sauteing. Then they have something called drizzle, which is a bold, a punchy finishing oil that you sprinkle on your salads, you dip your bread in, or even you top it off on your ice cream. Look, let me be clear. My daughter is the actual chef in the house, and she uses olive oil on everything from pastas to preparing steak. I mean, not only does this cook well, it smells delicious. Plus, as a healthy eater, Graza's extra virgin oils, they are loaded with those heart and brain friendly polyphenols. So it's good for you. Look, so here's what you get. You get 10% off your first order on Graza's site. But I personally suggest grabbing the trio. That's all the 3 squeezy bottles, the sizzle, the frizzle, and the drizzle, so that you're set for every style of cooking. So head right now to graza.co and use code Cohen to get 10% off of trio, which includes, again, sizzle, frizzle, and drizzle, and get to cooking your next chef quality meal. Again, head to Graza, graza.co, and use code Cohen, Cohen, to get 10% off the trio. And I love saying it, sizzle, frizzle, and drizzle. So get cooking now, right?
Yes,
You are questioning my knowledge on the concept of tariffs and who ultimately pays for those increases. And despite all of your claims that it's manufacturers and the countries that are being tariffed, it is, hands down, by everybody's comprehension, the American consumer. She'll go on to say, President Trump, who is the greatest negotiator in the history of the world, who understands tariffs. Look at how well the country did as a result of Trump's 2018 tariffs. You need to stop questioning him. This is what she says, right? You need to stop questioning. You need to put your faith in what he is doing, and in the future, you will come back and thank him profusely for doing the things that he is doing, as opposed to the previous administration and the gross mistakes that they made that resulted in our failing economy. These are the comments that she makes.
Well, she's full of shit, number one. She's not an economist, number 2. And if she does have an economic degree, then why the hell is she doing that job instead of doing another job? So she is, again, performing for Trump. Nothing she said should be taken seriously. In fact, I don't even know why reporters show up for those briefings. To be honest, I really don't, because I don't. First off, the fact that the White House is now so controlling of who's in the room. If I'm a legitimate news service, access to what? What are you getting access to?
You're not even given access.
You're not given access. You're sitting in the room and you're sitting there with your tape recorder listening to a bunch of bullshit lies coming at you. And then when you call it out, she gets mad at you. Really? That's your job now? That's your job, to listen to this woman just go off and harangue you with lies and bullshit, telling you, how dare you question my economic knowledge? Please, you don't have any economic knowledge. You have a notebook in front of you that's telling you what to say about the economy. That's the extent of your economic knowledge. You don't have a master's or PhD in economics. Last time I checked, I read your bio, didn't see that in there. So don't sit there and call me stupid for questioning how stupid you are in this moment, telling me to trust a man who couldn't make a casino work. Tell me, I mean, of all the businesses to fail, that's one.
Right, somewhere along the line, the house is always supposed to win.
The house is always supposed to win.
Right?
So if you couldn't do that job, I'm not sure I trust your economic.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this, but there was a funny article that was written about Carolyn Levitt claiming that she's tired of being mocked and hated as a conservative woman. So what do? They go right back to the old playbook, right? It's victimhood politics.
Now she's a woman?
Yeah.
So now she's a victim. Okay.
Right.
Gotcha. They go at the Democrats every time they, talk about the impact, the negative impact that misogyny has on women and and they bitch at them about all that stuff. And so now she's claiming that victimhood. I'm a conservative woman. Why are you coming after? Please.
You're not buying it, huh? So look, on top of that, when you listen to these press conferences and they're talking about still Ukraine, right? They're still at war. They're still being attacked every single day. Trump, of course, now demonstrated some, I don't know, some half-assed anger towards Putin for not acceding to whatever Trump's demands are. And of course, he's angry at Zelensky for not turning over the whole country, to him and to Putin with all of their rare earth. I mean, this to me is crazy. On top of that, we still have hostages in Israel, in Gaza, right? Taken from Israel. None of that has come to pass, as his campaign promised, that within 24 hours, he could accomplish all of these incredible things, including ending world hunger, fixing the environment, getting rid of, disease, right? All within 24 hours. None of this has obviously happened. So why do they still continue to promote something that anyone with a nursery school education knows is a lie? And yet they still promote it day in and day out, day in and day out.
Yeah, look, I think the whole thing around Putin and Trump, they're sort of dust up last week. It's all performative again. Donald Trump, at no time in his history, in politics or as president, has been sideways with Vladimir Putin. And people acting like somehow what he said last week, sort of going after Putin, was serious, just don't get it. He cannot go against his master that way. He just won't. And there's no indication that he ever will. They keep promoting and pushing the various lies and narratives that they are, because they're stuck with them. And they can't do anything else. They have offered up a bill of goods that a significant number of political actors, both domestically and globally, have also agreed to and embraced. So they're now stuck in this space, Michael. Where are they going to go? They're going to start telling the truth. I mean, how do you then make a 180 around to supporting Ukraine? Where does that leave all those Republicans who bought that bullshit in the first place and who were once pro-Ukraine, now are pro-Vladimir Putin, now are don't want to fund Ukraine? So it's just not going to happen. It's just not believable. And so folks just need to get their heads out of their asses on this stuff and recognize that we have a president who is a puppet for the Russian government and the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, who will do as they want him to do, who have been spewing, both he and Republicans, spewing talking points out of the Kremlin like drinking water. That's not going to change. So all of the little dust-ups that make people think that somehow there's going to be a shift, or that, I mean, we see, to your point, we see this. We know, everybody with a elementary school education can see, oh, well, I don't believe that. Of course, because there's nothing in the history to say otherwise. There's nothing that gives us evidence that any of this is going to change. At the end of the day, Vladimir Putin wants NATO broken. Donald Trump is working to do that. Vladimir Putin wants control of Ukraine. Donald Trump will give him that. Vladimir Putin wants to then set in motion the retaking of Eastern Europe. Donald Trump, our Secretary of State, our national security personnel, our DNI are going to help make that happen. Yeah. And so I don't, that's not going to change. It's just not. There's no scenario in which Donald Trump comes out and says, I was wrong. We need to protect Ukraine and defend Ukraine against Russian aggression. They can't even admit that Russia invaded Ukraine.
It's amazing, right?
So I don't know why we think this is going to change.
100% exactly. Look, the other day, Cory Booker did something which obviously Democrats, many people call a defining moment. Republicans, of course, people like, a bunch of different Republicans calling it a political stunt. But he spoke for 25 plus straight hours in the Senate, railing against Trump, Musk, budget cuts, corporate welfare, all of it, right? Do you think this is a mark or a shift in Democratic strategy, finally embracing some sort of bold, aggressive resistance, or as the Republicans are claiming, they're dismissing this whole thing as grandstanding, ignoring, of course, the days when, like, Ted Cruz tried to do it, but couldn't go 24 hours without pissing on himself, right? Including reading, Green Eggs and Ham, right? When he did it for 21 hours in 2013. What do you think about this? You think that this is, so you think it's a good move or a political stunt?
I don't think it's a political stunt, because I know Cory, and I know it's genuine to his heart, where he was frustrated from the lack of action by the Senate leadership. I think that's what this was. The capitulation, as many Democrats saw from Chuck Schumer, I think sort of drove that point. So it's not what Republicans are trying to cast it out to be, but nor is it some brave moment in the sense that Democrats are thinking that this definitionally changed the game, because the game isn't in Washington. The game is in states like Wisconsin.
Amen.
So, it's great to have Cory do that as a U.S. Senator, but, it may help call attention to some some but
it's not the defining moment that many are trying to portray it as.
I think, to be honest, it's more in line with where AOC and Bernie Sanders are. It's out there getting 30,000 people in a room. It's a town hall meeting with 1,500 pissed off voters in red districts. That's, I think, more of the game changer. I think the symbolism of what he did is important. I think they need to move off of and downplay that he broke Strom Thurmond's record, because then that just kind of makes it an easy layup for Republicans to piss all over it. Oh, see, that was just all about trying to break a record and losing the substance of what the man said for 25 hours. He did not read from Green Eggs and Hams. He read from the Constitution. He read letters of women and men, of families that are struggling in this world that's being created by Donald Trump and Elon Musk. That's very powerful. I think now translating that back to the streets is the most important piece, because Democrats, irrespective of the speechifying and the great sound bites, need to fundamentally do two things. Understand why 10 million of their voters stayed home in 2024, and then figure out how to get them back to the polls, because that's the game. You don't win back the House if voters are still staying at home. If your voters are not prepared to go to the polls, and you cannot rely on folks being pissed off at Doge or being upset with Elon to do that. You fundamentally need to figure out why they're pissed at you.
Right. Well, Mike, thank you so much, my brother. Great seeing you.
Good to see you, man.
Really, really soon. You make me smarter. You make everybody smarter. Thank you so much for joining. You.
I love being with you, man. We have great conversations both on and off air, and I really appreciate you for that and your leadership out here. Your voice, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, is important, because everybody talks about being in the room. Well, you were in the room for 15 years. And so when you say something, I listen and I learn from that to try to better understand what I'm seeing playing out in front of me. So I then know how to better prepare myself to be the counterforce against it. So I wish more people would take seriously your admonitions when you say, y'all, this is just crazy. There's a method here. You need to understand what the method is to the madness. So appreciate you for that.
I appreciate you. Thank you, my friend.
All right, buddy.